Liberal authoritarianism emanates from a two-part proposition. 1. The Republican Party is the root of all evil. And 2. The only effective foil to it is the Democratic Party. Therefore, any criticism of the Democrats is regarded as advocacy for evil. If the Democrats are exploitive, unjust, and destructive, one must regard this as always the lesser of two evils and support them. To put it simply, vote blue no matter who, even if the blues are mass-murdering gangsters. It was the presidency of Donald Trump and the onset of COVID-19 which saw liberals abandon their principles entirely and become authoritarian. All it took was an uncouth buffoon in the White House and a marginally lethal respiratory illness to elicit one of the greatest mass acts of ethical cowardice in US history. The tradition of social and political liberty, born out of the European Enlightenment, and which gave shape to the liberal democratic politics of this country, was dropped like a hot potato. Overnight, these liberals became fangs-out advocates for the most destructive and tyrannical suite of policies the country has ever seen, all out of fear of flu and personal disgust for one man. COVID hit an already Trump-addled left. Which brings me to an interesting phenomenon. A phenomenon employed as a highly effective propaganda weapon. Trump derangement syndrome. Trump derangement syndrome was used to piggyback the initial wave of authoritarian COVID policies into the social and political mainstream. The task was accomplished by making someone's hatred of Trump expressible by the level of authoritarian policy they advocated for. Since there were so many of the American political establishment with a bizarre and irrational hatred of Donald Trump, the COVID policies rapidly became unprecedentedly destructive and tyrannical. One blue governor trying to outdo the other in the level of oppression they implemented within their state. Let's look at another weapon deployed at about the same time. Anthony Fauci's early and correct assessment of masks being unnecessary, ineffective, and even harmful was quickly reversed once the mendacity masters recognized the power of masks as a propaganda tool. Masks became a quick, easy, and very public way for the good, obedient liberals to distinguish themselves from the Trump-loving basket of deplorables who questioned these abuses of power. Also, Trump-loving now becomes a common insult hurled at anyone, fan of Trump or not, who criticizes the establishment narrative. Conversely, blind obedience to the establishment narrative now becomes a virtue. The public desecration of science by industry-funded big pharma pundits on all legacy media and across the internet, suppression of effective treatments, mandated lockdowns of whole states, unprecedented levels of censorship, mandated injections of experimental medicine, and a never-ending torrent of other lies quickly turned our social landscape into a slurry of distrust and confusion, and the economy into a broken-down hulk, devastating the lives of millions of Americans. Consider the liberal establishment's response to criticism of the destructive effect these authoritarian COVID policies were having on poor and working people. The imperial press labelled these concerns a right-wing talking point. This is a remarkable 180-degree reversal of a long-held piece of the progressive agenda, all because the traditional critique no longer accommodated the new narrative and the tyranny which it required. For yet another remarkable reversal, let us remember our heroic healthcare workers early in the crisis and the betrayal they suffered later when rightly insisting the natural immunity they acquired by exposure to COVID-19 obviated their need to be vaccinated. The authoritarian liberals turned on them in an instant. Destroy the disobedient. 70,000 healthcare professionals in New York alone were summarily fired over refusal to take Big Pharma's poison. Consider, once again, the liberal establishment's response to criticism of the destructive effect these authoritarian coup-vid policies were having on poor and working people. The imperial press labelled these concerns a right-wing talking point. This is a remarkable 180-degree reversal of a long-held piece of the progressive agenda, all because the traditional critique no longer accommodated the new narrative and the tyranny which it required. We have to look at liberals to get the idea. Though liberals feign compassion for the poor, the undereducated, and the dispossessed, what they actually feel is abject contempt for them. Their liberal concern is nothing more than fashion, something superficial, something to conceal their disgust and rapacity, and something easily removed when in the appropriate company. Remember Obama's birthday bash? No masks. After all, it was a very sophisticated crowd, opined one pundit at the time. For his part, Trump just had to sound poor, undereducated, and unsophisticated, and liberal contempt for these characteristics was immediately transformed into a seething hatred for the president. Trump became the perfect vessel for all the bile, lies, and betrayal secreted into the bowels of the Democratic Party and political establishment over decades of criminal evil. The liberals went mad with rage at a glimpse of their own reflection. The crimes and treasons which establishment zombies tag on Trump are the same policies they advocate for. As long as the atrocities come wrapped in the right lie, the compassionate liberals are only too happy to say yes to unending imperial slaughter. Since the liberals regard themselves as virtuous by definition, this horrible evil must be located somewhere other than themselves. Where? In the person of Donald Trump, naturally. Americans were attacking Americans for simply stating facts. Our free speech was assaulted by an unprecedented level of censorship, complete with draconian punishments for any who contradicted the regime's narrative. People were having their careers destroyed, their pensions stolen, and their ability to exist confiscated simply for refusing to take an experimental gene therapy. A gene therapy which is now being understood as more lethal than the virus itself. See excess death data over the last 3 to 4 years. When queried, most of the propagandized don't even know why they hate Trump, or how anyone could resent the massive and unjustified incursions of state power into people's lives. The phenomenon is akin to a type of psychophage or mind-eating organism which, after acting upon its host for some time, leaves him or her permanently deprived of their ability to reason or think for themselves. Incidentally, the etymology of the word sophisticated becomes pertinent here. In Greek, Sophie means wisdom, as in philosophy, love of wisdom. Sophism, on the other hand, or someone who practiced sophistry in particular, was a nasty pejorative. A sophist in the Greek-speaking world of the 5th century described a highly skilled and often professional liar, a deceiver, a twister of words and polluter of minds. In this regard, our liberal class can lay an unshakable claim to being sophisticated. The hypocrisy, nay the insanity observed from the establishment zombies, occupies a category by itself. To make certain for yourself, it's worth the effort to stand up in a crowd of these miscreants and defend the free speech rights of Alex Jones, or defend the right of bodily autonomy against assault by a mandated injection of dangerous medication. You will see immediately that principles have no place here. In this place, you are the authoritarian by standing up for egalitarian principle. And standing up for freedom makes you fascist. And on war, standing up against imperial aggression, such as the US provoked and funded war in Ukraine, instead of evidencing a pro-peace progressive position, now makes one a stooge to foreign dictators. Scandalous. Yet most of the people engaging in these blatant acts of logical contradiction and ethical depravity honestly don't see it. There is a form of psychosis at work here. It just goes to show you how dangerously delicate the human mind is, and how malleable. Damn scary indeed.